This video has been funded in part by the Guild via Patreon. Check out the links in the description or at the end of this video for more details.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Gildart, and welcome back to a new episode of Comparison. This has been a long time coming. Dynasty Warriors has had its ups and downs, but there's been one question that's been asked to me over the last couple of years. It's not necessarily which is the best, but which is the worst. Some of you might already know my story with the Warriors franchise. I got started with Dynasty Warriors 3 Extreme Legends. I didn't quite enjoy it at first, but after playing it with a friend and learning we could knock down the difficulty a bit, we started having fun. Once my characters were well leveled, I started jumping back into the harder difficulties again. Then there was the demo for Dynasty Warriors 4 that was included in a PlayStation magazine. After playing this demo and getting the full game, I was absolutely hooked. This is how I came to love the franchise. I even bought the first Samurai Warriors when it was released and fell in love with that as well. I've played all of the spin-offs and most of the ports. You can see all of the games I own in my 1,000 subscriber special I posted in 2019's Muso May. But today we're talking about two games specifically, Dynasty Warriors 6 and Dynasty Warriors 9. These two games have been cited by many fans to be the worst points in the franchise. This is when major changes were made to the formula that made Dynasty Warriors a cult favorite. Today marks not only the biggest video I've done, but also a change in format. Since Dynasty Warriors changed so much with these two games, why not change the show up as well? Instead of giving the games a rating at the end of the video, I'm going to be awarding points as we go along. There are no limits to the points. If I feel one game does something better than the other, I'll give it a point. The winner in the end will not necessarily be the one that I enjoy more, but the one that has the highest score. It'll make more sense when we get into it, trust me. So today we're going dumpster diving to find the shiniest piece of trash in this garbage fire. Let's go. So here we are, on the outside. We just got off the heels of either Dynasty Warriors 5 or Dynasty Warriors 8, both of which, to me, kind of felt like an extension off of the one before it. Having said that, they were both great games in their own right, but we were ready for something fresh. So now, here we have the cover of Dynasty Warriors 6. Let's analyze it. I don't really see anything that makes me go, oh shit, I need to play this! It actually looks pretty generic. As a Warriors fan, you might recognize our poster boy Zhao Yun on the cover donning what I still believe is his best outfit yet. The blue tint of the cover goes really well with the red logo, and doesn't look too bad with either the PS3 or the 360 case. Hell, I don't even mind the PS2 case either aesthetically. Now, let's look at Dynasty Warriors 9. This cover looks instantly better in my opinion. Zhao Yun looks like he's jumping into the action. The background shows off this open world that makes me wonder what's in store for me. This is another game case that looks good both on PlayStation and Xbox. But what does the back of the case say? Dynasty Warriors 6 shows a couple of screenshots that show off some higher fidelity visuals with a statement, 1,000 men, one true warrior. This honestly looks kind of basic for a back cover, all things considered. The two action shots do look great, though Diao Chan feels a little out of place here. It almost seems like they were trying to say, hey, look at the cutscene visuals, but I think they could have chosen a better scene. 9's cover, though using less real estate, feels like it shows more intrigue than 6. Lu Bu is looking over the mountainside with the text, boundless action, history, reborn. It's just so good. I don't really like the grammar though. The period after history feels weird to me. But the action shots look so good. Gan Ning jumping off of the side of a building. Xiahou taking down a bunch of soldiers. It is just so good. Honestly, I have to give this one to Dynasty Warriors 9. Just from the cover alone, I would definitely pick this off a shelf over Dynasty Warriors 6. I'm pulled in by the atmosphere this cover alludes to. I just want to see what kind of game this is. Meanwhile, Dynasty Warriors 6 looks like the same old game. Even taking away my knowledge of the series, I'm more interested in 9's cover. Next, let's talk on a surface level. How do the games look in general? Well, let's start with how some of the characters' designs are. Here's Zhao Yun. As I said before, I like the Dynasty Warriors 6 designs a lot. First off, I much prefer the scarf to the sash of Dynasty Warriors 9's design. The armor is also so much shinier, and this looks more gallant than the other armor. I know Dynasty Warriors 9 was going for a more realistic design, but realism isn't always fun. I play these games to forget about the real world. Why don't we look at Lu Bu now? I gotta say, hands down, the all-black armor of Dynasty Warriors 6 is just more iconic looking to me than 9's golden armor.
How about my man Shahou-Dun? I love this outfit for Dynasty Warriors 6. It looks so much more badass than previous costumes. I like the armor underneath the jacket too, and I really don't mind the mace as his weapon. Shahou-Dun used a spear according to history, so seeing this kind of gives me more of that feeling. Now, I know it sounds like I'm shitting on Dynasty Warriors 9's design and art, but I'm really not. Both games look great, but I have to give this point to Dynasty Warriors 6 for having its own art style that doesn't seem to be too afraid of being itself. I love the direction and I think the characters look really good. Now, since we're talking about design, we should also talk about graphics. Not gonna lie, Dynasty Warriors 6 kinda looks like an upscaled PS2 game at times. The slight motion blur helps hide this, but when you zoom in on some of the foot soldiers and other items laid about the battlefield, it starts to show just how low poly some of these models are. That being said, the main characters look really good. When you actually take this game over to the PS2, it looks a bajillion times better. The interlaced display blends the low poly models in with the higher poly player characters. I would still prefer to play this in HD, but I can't deny that the PS2 version looks good and almost seems the right way to play Dynasty Warriors 6. It's kinda sad that the PS3 and 360 versions fall a bit short of how I think they should look. Now, moving on to Dynasty Warriors 9. They've patched this game to hell, and it shows if you've played this game on release. I'm playing this on my Xbox One X, and the enhancements definitely help it in the graphics department. It still has moments of slowdown or frame drops, but for the most part it's blended quite nicely and usually isn't too noticeable. In this case, both the main characters and the foot soldiers look decent. That being said, they seem to fall short of previous Warriors titles that we've had, like Samurai Warriors 4, Warriors All-Stars, and even Dynasty Warriors 8 in my opinion. Everything is a little dulled down, almost like it was hit with the whole brown filter that many other games suffered from in the 7th generation. Like, the 3 games I mentioned before were bursting with colors. You can definitely notice them much more. And the same can be said about Dynasty Warriors 6. But I still have to give this point to Dynasty Warriors 9 because it's just overall better to look at. Considering it's a console generation after 6, it makes sense why it looks better. I just wish there was more vibrant colors in it.
So now, let's get into some of the things that you should probably know before you get into either game. This is where we look at some of the mechanics and philosophies that differentiate the titles from each other.
Let's start with what type of game these two are. Dynasty Warriors 6 has some similar gameplay styles to that of the classic Warriors titles like Dynasty Warriors 2 through 5. The only thing is that the combat system used differs from the charge attack system in those previous games. Dynasty Warriors 6 uses the Renbu system. If you're able to keep up a combo long enough, your moveset will extend. If you get hit too much or can't keep up your combo, your Renbu level will decrease and place you at the previous moveset. This can be really tough when you're playing a stage that's littered with archers, or if there's very little enemies. There's also no charge attacks. You have a light attack and a heavy attack combo that don't mix. Now, with Dynasty Warriors 9, they took this game into the open world. This feels rough around the edges at first, but can be pretty exciting when you come by a base you can take over. That being said, the open world lacks a lot of life. You rarely see troops or officers roaming the world. For the most part, you'll only run into enemies at bases and mission locations. They also got rid of the charge attack system that was brought back in Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8. Instead, they used the state combo system. With this system, you only really have your main light attack, but then you have moves that will place the enemy in different states. Depending on if they're stunned, downed, or in the air, your combo will change from the usual one you would see if you mashed square or X. All things considered, if I have to choose one over the other, I definitely give a point to Dynasty Warriors 6 on this one. It feels like even through all of the patches, Dynasty Warriors 9 still doesn't know whether it wants to be an Ubisoft-style open world or a Warriors game. It's come a long way, but Dynasty Warriors 6's stages were well thought out. They don't stray too far from what we know and have grown fond of over the years. As far as the Renbu and state combo systems, I'll go a little bit more in depth on that when we get to the gameplay and story part of the comparison. Another topic that comes up quite often when discussing either Dynasty Warriors 6 or Dynasty Warriors 9 are the clones. In both instances, we get characters sharing movesets with only small or no variation between them. In Dynasty Warriors 6, we had a total of 24 movesets, with 16 being unique. The characters who had story modes were the only ones to receive their own individual movesets, with the exception of Xiao Chao, whose sister did not appear in this entry, thus not cloning her. As well, Sun Shengsheng and Diao Chan received their own stories, but share their movesets with Yue Ying and Zhenji, respectively. For Dynasty Warriors 9, we get a total of 34 movesets, with only one being unique. the only individual moveset is Lu Bu. Each weapon is shared by up to 3 other characters. Every character had their own Muso and special attacks, but that's really the only unique part about them. Now that being said, both 6 and 9 received updates in one way or another, expanding the content available to us. Dynasty Warriors 6 received a special release on PS2 globally and PSP in Japan, removing 6 characters from their clone designation, making them unique with new weapons. In doing so, some characters who kept their movesets from the base version would end up being the only character left with that moveset. This decloned Sun Ce, who became the only playable character to use the spear moveset after Ma Chao, Zheng He, and Taishi Ci received their own unique weapons. As well, since Yue Ying received her own weapon and moveset, it decloned not only her, but Sun Shangsheng as well. This bumped up the total number of movesets to 30, with 24 being unique. And if you count the inclusion of Meng Huo in Dynasty Warriors 6 Empires, that bumps the total to 31, and individuals up to 25. The Empire's title, as well as Strike Force, kept the updated weapons from the PS2 release. Dynasty Warriors 9 received a bunch of DLC packs that needed to be paid for. This added 15 new weapons to the mix. These weapons would become an additional EX weapon for some of the cloned characters. Although these weapons were added, only the player character gets to use them. The only way to set an NPC to equip this weapon is if you have them as a companion and equip it for them that way. But once they're not your companion, they'll go back to holding their base game weapon. I wish this could be added in so that we could make the NPCs use their proper weapons. When equipping these DLC weapons, even if it's considered an EX weapon for that character, it won't change their Muso or their special attacks. This is yet another thing that makes these additions feel lazy. Even with the 4 DLC characters, this doesn't add new movesets to the mix. They are just clones of already existing characters. Along with that, since Lu Lingqi gets her cross pikes from Dynasty Warriors 8, and since Xiaoji uses the sword and shield as well, it doesn't actually declone Xing Sai as well. That being said, Xiahou Yuan and Yue Jin get new weapons which not only declones them, but also Taishi Ci. And with Sun Jian and Huang Zhong getting their new weapons as well, it declones Xiahou Dun. Then, with Wang Yi receiving her Epi Piercers, it declones Sun Shangsheng. That being said, we don't get the full declone effect with the DLC weapons. But the bright side is, this brings the total movesets up to 49, with 19 of them being unique. As far as this point goes, I'm having a hard time choosing. Dynasty Warriors 6 has the highest number of individual movesets, and if you're playing on the PS2 version or Empires, the NPC characters will use their new weapons. On the other hand, Dynasty Warriors 9 has the highest number of different movesets. Though many of the characters are clones and you have to pay extra for the DLC, you can switch what weapons your main character and companion character are using. So if you don't like their base game, or even their DLC weapon, you're not stuck with it. So in my eyes, the weapons thing has to go to Dynasty Warriors 9. Being able to switch between weapons is a great feature that was introduced in Strike Force, and I have used it all of the time. If you enjoy Lu Bu using the cross pikes, you can just have him using them. I hate the club characters like Xu Chu, Hua Xiong, and Huang Gai, so being able to switch weapons makes me feel like playing as these characters more. Speaking of weapons, let's talk about how they're obtained in these games because it's very different. First, let's talk about what it was like beforehand. So in Dynasty Warriors 3 through 5, you had a first weapon that only provided you with the basic 4-hit combo. You can unlock a second and third weapon naturally by playing through the game, which would give you access to the 5 and 6-hit combos respectively. You would also have a fourth weapon as well as a fifth weapon in Dynasty Warriors 3 and 4 Extreme Legends. To get this, you would need to meet specific criteria to unlock, usually by playing a specific stage as a specific character doing a specific thing on a harder difficulty. Dynasty Warriors 6 wipes that away and only gives each character 3 weapons that are light, normal, and heavy. This means there's no progression to the weapons you unlock, nor are there any secret weapons to unlock. I really dislike this because you never get the sense that you're getting stronger weapons other than the fact that the number is getting bigger. On top of that, all of the non-story characters don't even get different skins between the light, normal, and heavy weapons. This means no matter what weapon you equip these characters, they're going to look the same. This also means that you don't necessarily get guaranteed stronger weapons, just a higher attack at the cost of lower movement versus lower attack which gives you faster movement. You can only get stronger weapons by playing on harder difficulties, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as actually unlocking secret and stronger weapons. Now let's talk about what Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 did. They brought back the charge attack systems with the max of 6-hit combos. However, it was no longer tied to your weapon. Your level or skills now decided your character's combo length. You would be able to purchase various weapons from a blacksmith as well as find them in stages. Both Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 had secret weapons, with the traditional secret weapons being included in Dynasty Warriors 7 Extreme Legends and onwards. Dynasty Warriors 9 only gives you a 4-hit combo, no increase. You can still purchase and craft a variety of weapons with different looks and stats. This feels more in line with what we know and love from Warriors games. Now, you don't necessarily get secret weapons. There are super strong weapons for each weapon type, but the only way to obtain them is to craft them. You need to get the scrolls to unlock the ability to craft these weapons. This can either be randomly by killing the officer that uses that weapon as their EX, or by gathering various types of old coins and using them to buy the scrolls. Once you have the scrolls, you need to make sure that you have the materials necessary to craft that weapon. You'll need to scour the land looking for these materials and gathering enough. This is also how you get the majority of your items and orbs as well. If I'm giving an additional point for how the weapons are obtained and the weapon systems, I have to give this to Dynasty Warriors 9 for staying the course and not upsetting too much. It added in crafting as well. Even though you don't really have secret weapons, in order to craft and obtain every single weapon, it's still some hard work you have to go through. Unlike Dynasty Warriors 6, where all of the weapons in the game can be unlocked naturally. The last thing that I'll mention that you need to know before you get into these games is how your character progresses. Both games take on an RPG style leveling system. In Dynasty Warriors 6, you level up and get skill points that can go towards a skill tree that is unique to each character. You can unlock passive skills like being able to swim faster or cause more damage while in rage mode. You can also unlock stat increases as well. This is where you also unlock the level 3 and 4 Renbu. In Dynasty Warriors 9, it's literally just the leveling system. You don't get any additional skills, nor do you unlock any new attacks. You're pretty much the same throughout the whole game, but your stats increase with each level up. In order to gain abilities and more stat boosts, you have to equip your weapon with different orbs and your character with accessories. And that's really it. This is a no-brainer. At least with Dynasty Warriors 6, you have a sense of progression. In Dynasty Warriors 9, there's nothing there. Everything you earn can be used at level 1. It doesn't matter. I would have liked to see certain weapons or items only be available once you've reached a certain level, or at least give us an expanded moveset. Alright, now we're on to the main course. Let's talk about the gameplay. I said earlier that Dynasty Warriors 6 uses a Renbu system, while Dynasty Warriors 9 uses a state combo system. So what does that mean? I did speak a little bit about both systems earlier, but I'm going to go deeper into things right now. In Dynasty Warriors 6, your light and heavy attack combos are separate. They don't mix at all. That being said, they have different uses during combat. Your light attacks will loop indefinitely as long as you keep mashing the square or X button. They're easily blocked, but are the quickest way to melt the enemy ranks down. If you're being blocked, you just need to switch to using your heavy combos. These attacks are slower and don't loop as well, but break guards. This is extremely useful because enemies can now guard from all directions. As you continue to attack the enemies, you'll grow your Renbu level. There are 4 levels in total. With each level, your combos get longer, giving you access to more devastating attacks, is what I'd like to say. You see, by looping the combo sets, you make it almost unnecessary to go for the higher Renbu levels. Starting out, your character has access to Renbu level 2 without any skill increases, but that's all you need to go through the whole game. Then, there's Dynasty Warriors 9's state combo system. If you hold down R1 or the right bumper, you'll gain access to special moves when pressing the face buttons. Triangle or Y sends the enemy into the sky, giving you access to an aerial combo. Pressing square or X stuns the enemy, leading into a more powerful combo that pushes them back. Pressing X or A drops your opponent to the ground, which can lead into another combo. Pressing circle or B is that character's special move. This might leave the enemy in one of those states, or it'll be an AoE style attack. The first 3 moves are based on which weapon you have equipped, and each weapon has their own combo set. The special attack is based on your character, and as I said before, they use their base weapon every single time. I wish this attack was also based on which weapon you had equipped with that character. It feels weird to have your character running around the battlefield with one weapon to pull out another one just for one attack. In both games, you do have access to a dodge roll. In Dynasty Warriors 6, this can be used to avoid attacks from enemy officers or when surrounded by large groups. I honestly don't use the dodge roll too much in Dynasty Warriors 6. In Dynasty Warriors 9, you can use it for the same reasons, but you can also lock your camera onto enemy officers as well. This allows you to dodge behind them for an opening, which, unlike Dynasty Warriors 6, you can only block in front of you. I also used it as a quick way to jump over to another group of troops or another officer. It helps keep the combat rolling. This also costs you stamina. Yes, Dynasty Warriors 9 has a stamina meter. This lowers when you dodge or sprint. And yes, you can now sprint, but only when you have your weapon put away, which is another thing you can do in this game. Dynasty Warriors 9 also brought back the bow, which was a hated mechanic of mine in Dynasty Warriors 2 through 5. Dynasty Warriors 6 completely took it out, but Dynasty Warriors 9 is the first game since 5 that we've seen it in, and they've completely made it better. Instead of zooming into a first person and forcing you to stand in one spot, you can walk around and look in a complete 360 degrees. This makes aiming so much more intuitive. I've got into the controller layout and changed it so that attack is mapped to R2 or the right trigger and played Dynasty Warriors 9 as if it were an FPS. In Dynasty Warriors 6, they also added special abilities. There were many different abilities that were shared among various characters, either maxing out your Renbu level, making boulders or arrows drop from the sky, or even causing bursts of flames to appear out of nowhere. This would usually give killed enemies a chance to drop some extra experience while your special was in effect. The fire ability would also cause bases to catch a flame. In Dynasty Warriors 6 Empires, you could equip your character with up to 4 of these special abilities, which was really cool. My personal favorite is the one where you can run really fast and swing your weapon around. That one's a whole lot of fun. Both games still have horse combat, but elephants are taken out from both games. They were added back into Dynasty Warriors 9 through a patch, but you can't ride them. Horse combat was made better in Dynasty Warriors 6 with the fact that you only attack on one side now, instead of swinging back and forth like previous games. Some characters still do that, but this has become the norm now. While on a horse in Dynasty Warriors 9, you can still lock onto an enemy officer, which makes me want to use horse combat even more. Overall, as far as gameplay goes, this is also a difficult one for me to choose a clear winner. Dynasty Warriors 9 also doesn't have any new abilities or movesets unlocked as you level up. You just get stronger. Meanwhile, even though Dynasty Warriors 6's combos are next to meaningless to level up, you still have a sense of progression while playing through the game with that character. All that being said, I think I'm gonna have to give it to Dynasty Warriors 9 because the overall combat is more intuitive than Dynasty Warriors 6's repetitive mess. I actually really enjoy locking onto an enemy and dodging behind them when they're blocking to get through their guard and using the state combos. I just wish there was a little bit more to this combat system. Then we have the story. Both games cover the story of the Three Kingdoms era of China, from the rise and fall of the Yellow Turbans to the beginning of the Jin Dynasty in Dynasty Warriors 6 and the eventual subjugation of China by Jin in Dynasty Warriors 9. Oh, spoiler alert, none of the Three Kingdoms in the story actually win. I mean, technically Wei won because Jin was born from that dynasty, but also technically no one won. It's almost as if war is pointless, man, and we should just spread love and peace, dude. Anyways, Dynasty Warriors 6 presents a story similar to that of the classic games. There are cinematic videos that play between stages to tell the story of the characters you're playing as. These cinematics focus solely on your character, which is nice. This gives the player more meaning as they're playing through the story. You begin to feel more connected to the character you're playing as and really care about their wants and needs. What fuels them to keep fighting? You really want to see them succeed, even if you were playing as an enemy officer before. Dynasty Warriors 6 also plays up the Japanese anime influences with scenes that throw all notions of historical accuracy out the window. This can be seen in some of the new weapons that the characters use, like Yue Ying's crossbow armed gauntlet thing, to scenes like Lu Bu fending off the flood attack at Xia Pi with his cross pikes. This just screams shonen action anime. Honestly, I think a Dynasty Warriors 6 anime would be amazing, especially if they somehow work the Strike Force transformations into it.
Yet another missed opportunity for Dynasty Warriors 6.
In Dynasty Warriors 9, you go through the story of the dynasty, even though you select a character to use throughout the story. You may miss certain missions or have extra ones based on who you're playing as, but most of the main story missions are the same no matter who you pick. You play with the character you've selected from the chapter in which they joined their affiliated faction until the mission before they actually die. This means you don't get to play that character on other factions that they may have served. So when Guan Yu joins Wei at Guandu, or how Zhao Yun started with Gan Sun San and Yuan Shao, you don't get to see those sides of the story. Also, some characters have shorter stories than others. I mean, Liu Bei has the most staggering at a whopping 10 chapters, while someone like Shu Shu only has 1. The longer stories are still kept fresh by the ability to swap weapons, and thanks to a patch, swap characters, so you don't get bored using only one moveset. Once you finish the story, you get a small cutscene for that character. The story in this game is presented in RPG-style conversations. Walls of text and exposition greet the player in these cutscenes. There are cinematics that play during certain missions, but they're very few and far between, with most of the cinematics in this game just being at the end of that character's story, similar to a classic fighting game. This also means that when you play through multiple character stories, you're going to experience the same dull, wall of text conversations with static, default expressions and character model animations. Don't get me wrong, these are fully voice acted, so it's not like you have to read the whole thing, but when you've experienced this conversation 4 times already, it's not worth sticking around for. Both games have hypothetical stories, with Dynasty Warriors 9 only really having one in the base game for Zhangjiao. The rest of them were DLC. Some of these hypothetical moments and stories are the best in both games. I'm honestly one of those people who has a hard time really keeping interest in the story after Chebi, and don't really have any interest after Wuzhang, so these were nice distractions from the main historical paths. But overall, I definitely have to give the point to Dynasty Warriors 6. It's just more concise and character driven, while Dynasty Warriors 9 tries too hard to be a drama. Dynasty Warriors 6's story is fun and over the top. I think we need to go back to this style of storytelling, rather than trying to push an absolute, historically accurate narrative. Even though we get less characters in the story mode in 6, it doesn't overstay its welcome like 9 does.
And welcome to the bonus round! This is where I go over some quick positive and negative aspects of these games. Since these are smaller points, they're not going to add up just like the other points that I made throughout the video. For every 3 positive points, I will give 1 full point to the game. For every 3 negative, I will take away 1 point. No partial points. You'll understand it when we get into it. Let's start with Dynasty Warriors 6.
This was the introduction of Daddy Sunjan, which not only made me question my sexuality at age 16, but perpetuated the fact that Wu is just filled with pretty boys by making the earliest leader a DILF. Dynasty Warriors 6 also brought us the first introduction of Jin, which down the road led to the introduction of the best waifu, Chunhua, so I kinda have to give this point to them. More like Chunhua as hell! We also finally got camera control after 8 years of not having it. Grapples were cool and were never used again. Running charge attacks were cool, and were never used again. Why? We also got to climb ladders and swim in water for the very first time. This was really cool and blew my fucking mind when I first saw it in gameplay.
Oh wow, 6 positive points? So that means a full 2 points to Dynasty Warriors 6. Now, let's take away some.
Now, I know I originally gave the point to Dynasty Warriors 9, but I can't say it enough that the Renbu system is a stupid, repetitive mess. Though I don't mind the weapon changes, this was the beginning of Gan Ning's descent into a lackluster character. Back in my day, he was fucking top tier. Speaking of changing characters for the worst, look what you did to Liu Bei! He's more like Liu Babyface now. I'm surprised they removed characters like Zhang Wei, Xiao Qiao, Peng De, Xing Cai, Zuo Ce, Zhu Rong, and Meng Huo, the latter only becoming playable in the Empire's entry. I can't be the only one who thinks it's strange that all of the cutscenes are pre-rendered. They didn't age as well as the in-game engine cutscenes we saw in older titles. The motion blur in the PS3 and 360 versions really don't help it look better. I almost prefer the PS2 version to them, which is sad to say. Also, the PS2 having more content than the HD consoles is kind of a kick in the balls. That could have easily been available to us as DLC. Wow, you're so bad that Warriors Odyssey 3 wasn't made until the next entry? Playing something like Dynasty Warriors 7 using the Dynasty Warriors 6 outfits and weapons in a Dynasty Warriors 6 stage just shows how good this game could have been if they kept with the charge attack system. Just the fact that Dynasty Warriors 7 went back to a charge attack system made it that much better, and it didn't even have a free mode.
Oh geez, 10 negative? That means we're taking away 3 points from Dynasty Warriors 6. Time for 9.
This is the first game to have a Chinese dub available in the Western market. I love it because it just helps with my immersion. Even though the map is pretty empty, when you're running along the field and you see an army in the distance, it's a feeling no other Warriors game has been able to give. Okay, hunting wildlife is actually kind of fun. Liu Bei is back, baby! Waifus and husbandos, as far as the eyes can see. Bringing back bodyguards was really cool. I'm glad they patched that in. Speaking of which, it's nice to see Koei still supporting this game. Slowly but surely they add little quality of life updates to the game, which is the only reason why I keep coming back.
7 positives for 9. That means we're giving it 2 full points. Let's change that.
The Chinese dub being available is so good because it also helps with the terrible English voice acting. There are some good voices here, but for the most part it is really bad. Copyright strikes for the closing song? That sucks. Oh god, why? How could you do such a thing? The grappling hook honestly ruined the game for me. I think it would have been better as a limited item that you need to buy or craft in order to use. When you play online, sometimes you'll run into each other and only one of you will see enemies. Like, what the hell? Wow, you were so bad that Warriors Odyssey 4 was made using the previous entry? No DLC from previous entries, especially after Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 and Odyssey 3 were filled to the brim with nostalgia. Now that's a real drop of the ball.
And with 7 negative points, that means we're taking 2 more away from Dynasty Warriors 9.
So with everything that's been said, all that we've talked about today, the winner is Dynasty Warriors 9. It may have more patches than Grandma's quilt, but it does the trick sometimes. I have to admit that on any given day, I'll flip-flop around on which one I actually prefer. But at the end of the day, I don't think either is my cup of tea. I mean, I prefer coffee. Now, I want to make something very clear. I had a decent enough time with both of these games. I know they have their fan base in the community, and you are all entitled to your opinion. Personally, I think these are both low points in my favorite franchise, and I hope Koei Tecmo can bounce back from this with Samurai Warriors 5 and Dynasty Warriors 10. You can be guaranteed that I'll be keeping an eye out for details for upcoming Warriors titles. I've been a fan of this franchise since the 3rd entry's expansion. I've been following this company for 17 years. My obsession is almost old enough to vote. It hurts me to see the franchise I hold so dear fall so low. Here's hoping that the future is bright and promising. Anyways, everybody, how did you enjoy the new format of the show? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and tell me how you feel about Dynasty Warriors 6 and 9 too. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe for more. If you'd like to support the channel and vote on my next video, you can join the Guild at the $3 tier or higher. If you enjoyed this video, maybe check out this playlist of all of my Warriors reviews. With every year, the playlist grows. And as always, everyone, I will see you all down in the comments.